So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to give this quote, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lexi, and I'm going to have her kind of go through what the literature has been telling us about a school attendance, and then we'll come back and look specifically at the experts model. But the most recent federal data shows that in the 2021 school year, at least 14.7 million students nationwide were chronically absent. This means that chronic absence was almost doubled from the more than 8 million students of pre-COVID-19 who were missing so many days of school that they were academically at risk. And so you can see how those numbers have increased and how COVID was a contributing factor to that. So I'm going to bring up the slide deck for, there we go, slideshow. And Lexi, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk us through this. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so I have written a lit review that is on Circle on, I believe it's in the library or the resource section, and you are free to go peruse that as you want. There's like 30 to 50 sources. I can't remember how many I culled, but yeah, there's a decent amount of sources. Chronic absenteeism is generally defined as missing 10% or more of the school year for any reason. That works out to about 2 days per month or about 18 days over the school year. Um, Sometimes people can use chronic absenteeism and truancy interchangeably, but there's actually a little bit of a difference. Truancy is unexcused absences. It varies by state how many you're allowed. Also, there tends to be a little bit more of a legal responsibility with truancy, while chronic absenteeism is any absence for any reason. So that's sickness, travel, mental health days, skipping school, suspensions, anytime you're not in class. That is a chronic absentee. Not in class for 10% of the school year. That's a chronic absenteeism. Um, it has jumped about 20 to 30% in every district in almost every state post-COVID. Some states or some districts even more, but it's a real big problem. And then students who are absent for truancy reasons generally have a disinterest in school and fail to see the relevance of their daily life. Chronic absentee in general, there's lots of different reasons, but if they're truant, if they're not just not wanting to go to class or go to school, it's generally because they are disinterested. All right. Um, Absenteeism is cumulative, which is a really big problem. And it's also descriptive. So attendance rates in kindergarten are indicators of poor attendance and poor academic achievement in the future. So by sixth grade, chronic absences can indicate the likeliness someone will drop out of school. Absenteeism in the ninth grade is a better predictor of dropout rates than test scores. So they can be, a high achieving A student, but if they're chronically absent 10% of the time, they're more likely to drop out. It's cumulative a lot of times because school builds on skills that you have to learn and be there for all of the lessons to learn, not just not just subjects like math and science and literature, although those are really important, but also social skills, how to be leaders, how to interact with people, confidence. All of these are things that you learn in school and are cumulative. So students with the highest absence rates in kindergarten are not likely to catch up with their peers by fifth grade. They tend to not be able to read or do math as well on standardized tests as their peers. And if you are chronically absent for 10% or more of a school year between 8th and 12th grade, you're over 7 times more likely to drop out. And that your likelihood of being chronically absent doubles with every year. Yeah, it's cumulative. This is the really important part. All right, next slide. To be absent in school can cause a lot of problems in adulthood or on your further education. This is college, but a college graduate is likely to live 9 years longer and have lower infant mortality rates than someone who has graduated high school. This can be for a variety of reasons, like better job opportunities, better information about um, health and medical services, better access to medical services. There's lots of reasons, but it is you can see in the data that it's more likely to live 9 years longer. It is strongly associated with the increased risk of teenage pregnancy for a variety of reasons. One of is if you're not in school, then you have more time to get in trouble. You have more time to meet people who are older, who may have less morals, who are more likely to take advantage of um, like a pretty vulnerable teenage girl than if like, that girl was in school with her own peers. Chronically absent teenage girls may not believe or may believe that they do not have much to lose academically by becoming a mother, and they may engage in more risky sexual behaviors. They also may not have the good foundation of health and of health education that can help them to not engage in those sexual behaviors. It is estimated that 10 annual days of absence in elementary school decreases total lifetime earnings by 1 to 2%. This is probably because it interrupts those important skills that I talked about earlier. And schooling significantly reduces the probability of interaction with the criminal justice system, particularly for men and particularly for minorities. So it is not only for minority men, but those are really affected. So men who graduate high school save society between 14 and 26% in crime reduction. So that's because they're less likely to commit larceny, they're less likely to commit burglary, to murder, all these things. They're less likely to be in the prison system. And so they save society between 14 and 26%. And interestingly, I haven't found any more updated research on this, but in 2004, at the time of the paper that I read, a 1% increase in high school graduation will ultimately save as much as $1.4 billion at the time, which is $2.3 billion in 2025, or about 2,100 per additional graduate. So that the societal burden is a lot less if you graduate high school. So there's a lot of effects that absenteeism has on adulthood. That is not to say that if you are absent for 10%, you're automatically going to go to prison or, be a teenage mother or whatever. It's just more likely. And it increases your risk of doing those behaviors. Also engaging in substance abuse is a really big, when you're absent, you're more likely to engage in those. There's some really good interventions, though, and best practices for students that are chronically absent. There is a resource on the Lit Review called "The Attendance Playbook: Smart Strategies for Reducing Student Absenteeism Post-Pandemic" by Phyllis Jordan. That if you are in a school or dealing with chronic absenteeism, it has practically every any strategy that you could want, as small as like greeting people at the door to more involved family intervention policies. It has the research behind it has whether it's accurate or it's just a great resource if you're involved in absenteeism. I highly recommend that one. Some of the top interventions and best practices from that and from around the internet are family engagement. That is intervention that is early and often, including direct personalized strategies like letters or texts to parents and home visits from teachers or staff. One school district reported a 21% decrease in absenteeism when each family had one visit from a teacher or staff member, just to say, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your kid enjoying school? It is a really big burden on school districts, but if your district or school has a lot of absentee students, this might be something to think about. Curriculum reflection is also a really good strategy. Basically, particularly for students that think that school isn't relevant to their daily life, making sure that the curriculum that they're in is relevant, but also have them reflect on that relevance, whether it's through essays, through discussion groups. If you have a kid sit down at the end of a lesson and say, okay, how can I apply this lesson to my life? They're more likely to stay in school and more likely to return to that class because they can see the relevance of it. If you have the resources, universal free breakfasts can decrease absenteeism by 4 to 6%. That we're still needing more data on this. It's still an early thing, but particularly for places that are food insecure, having one more breakfast that is healthy and free really just prepares students for the day and helps them stay in school. Particularly for elementary students, air purifiers can increase attendance in really drastic ways. One of the largest reasons for absenteeism in kindergartners and in elementary school students is asthma. They're not able to breathe properly, and so having clean air in classrooms can really improve attendance. And honestly, this is not helpful for high school students, but for future generations, really, it's best to target the younger students as soon as possible. Once you get to about 8th grade, then it really becomes dire if you're absent. If students have already made decisions about risky behaviors, those cumulative effects are already coming into play. They may be missing those discussions on absenteeism because they are absent. So teaching the importance of school attendance needs to begin really in kindergarten or 1st grade. We need to be telling students, hey, this is important to your life. It's important to who you're going to be as an adult for you to be in school. And then finally, a really easy way, I say easy, but it's not very easy or simple, but school connectedness is one of the biggest factors in keeping students in school. School connectedness is how much a student feels like they belong and are supported by their peers, by their teachers, by school staff. This is really intangible, but it's extremely important because in order to succeed and stay in school, students need to believe that both their peers and adults in school support, value, and care for both their academic achievement and individual well-being. Research suggests that school has a protective factor on children and adolescents. So if you have a child that is in a really negative, has a really negative home experience, a really bad family, bad neighborhood, school connectedness and being in school can help that those effects of that childhood be mitigated. It can't completely cancel out having absent parents or being in a bad neighborhood, but it can really help shield the worst effects of that. And it can also help children be more resilient and able to heal from those negative experiences. Um, Community is really important, even for kids. And so making sure that they feel like they're a valued member of that community is it contributes to them staying in school. And then finally, adoption of an early warning system is repeatedly deemed the most effective, catching students at the very very first beginnings of their absenteeism before it can really set in and begin accumulating can stop the negative effects of absenteeism in its tracks. This early warning system should be based on intentional relationships with students as well as their parents if possible, and should include mental health services and social emotional learning problems. So welfare or social workers in school, teachers that care and are engaged. And this is really where we can begin to see SBIRT being a real big factor. If you have a lot of adults who are interested in your life and how you're doing in school, you're really more likely to stay in school. So that's my pitch for yeah, not being absent in class. Thank you.